right. Jackie Porter, welcome to the show. It is so good to have you on She Talks Business. How are you today?
I am fantastic. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm happy to have you. So we are bridging from our last season, which was all about money, into our next season, which is the Advisor Series. And I'd kind of like you to give me a little bridge. So tell me something. What is your one piece of money advice that you would give an entrepreneur? What's one thing you think every entrepreneur needs to know about money?
I think it's just consider it something that you need to invest in knowledge about money. Consider that something you do your whole life. It's not a one and done. It's a constant thing you need to invest in. So it's kind of like investing in your business, investing in learning, invest in learning about money and something that you don't know, that you feel vulnerable about. Take the time to learn a little bit about that and get advice about that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really good advice because I would say myself, if I think about my life going from having no money to having money, there's definitely a new devil at every new level. And
Yes.
so kind of learning about different things to do, because if you started where I started, it was really, I started in the hole, and then all of a sudden you're break even. And then all of a sudden you have a little bit of money, but not so much that you really know what to do with it. And then you end up with a surplus of money. And so it's like, as you continue to grow, you need to learn what to do with that
Yeah.
money.
Yeah, and that build your resilience around that, because I think everybody who's been a business owner for a while knows it can be a humbling process, as you
Yes.
know, Lisa.
Yes, yes, yes,
So
yes,
if you,
yes,
if you put your ego at the door, you give your bank account a fighting chance.
yes, yes, yes. So, Jackie, tell us a little bit about you. You are one of Canada's most well-known financial planners. So, tell me a little bit about why you are passionate about financial planning, because I know it wasn't your first choice of a career.
Yes, yes, and we may have had this story before, but yeah, I'm kind of your accidental advisor. This isn't something I thought I was going to be doing. I really came upon learning about money really for my own purposes. See, I was raised by a single mom. We came from super humble beginnings, and my mother came here as a domestic in Canada, and she, just struggled. And so my narrative around money was you had to work really, really hard for money, because that's what I saw her do. So unfortunately, my mother passed away when I was quite young. And that's really the principle that I learned that took me to survival mode. It got me through, working 3 jobs through high school, through university, and not hustling was what I understood. But by the time I got my first full-time job, I was so tired. And I was there for 5 years. So I was 16 when my mother passed away. 10 years later, I'm 26. Um, I had my first full-time job between like 22 and 26, then got downsized for my first full-time job. And it was actually at that point in time that a friend of mine, her and I shared a bed together during high school, university, she's like, you should talk to a financial planner. I'm like, what's that? and so that's literally my first foray into understanding, that I didn't know anything about money, and sitting down with this advisor who happened to be a woman of color, which would have been like a unicorn back in the 90s.
Yeah.
She was having my very first money conversation with me. And she said things to me like, money could pass through your hands your entire life, and you could be the only one who never benefits from it. And that hit me so hard. And then she was talking about things like money working hard for you. I was like, what? Money can do that? So anyway.
Wow, those are such profound statements. Let's just stop for a second. Money could pass through your hands your entire life and never benefit you. Like
That hit me
that is
so
a
hard.
defining moment.
That hit me so hard, Lisa. Hit me really hard. And, then she's talking about money working hard for me. And again, immigrant work ethic. You brag about how hard you work when you're an immigrant. That's all you do. Like, how many jobs do you have? Like, it's all of that. So those two things made me like have this moment in your life, like a defining moment in your life. That was my defining moment. I was like, I'm tired. I'm 26 and I'm tired. And I certainly don't want the next 10 years of my life to look like the last 10 years of my life. What do I need to do? I need to learn everything about this. Why hasn't anyone ever told me about this?
It's,
So that
one of my
was,
pet peeves in school. They don't teach you anything about money. It's terrible. Such a
no,
disservice to students today.
absolutely. So that's what really put me on my journey. And I started off because I was like, I need to learn about this. I don't want to work this hard the next 10 years of my life. What do I need to know? And so as we continued on our conversation, and I was still so struck by these words, I said, what do I need to do to get into this industry? I need to learn about this. I need to figure out how to make money work for me. I don't want to do this anymore. And yeah, that's my first foray in the business. And so I started off just getting my licenses for me. I thought I would do this on the side because I was so sure at that time when I left my first job in communications that I was going to be a journalist. My last name's Porter, supposed to be a reporter. That's what I always thought I was going to do.
Porter the
I was
reporter.
sticking my hand in people's faces and pretending it was a microphone. And wouldn't you know that after, I learned everything I could about money, I wrote a book for women on single by choice or chance, because that was me, suddenly single, losing my mom, being a person who was on my own. And, during that time period, building wealth for myself, I just kind of realized as I was telling my story to different people, just humbly telling my story one-on-one, they're like, this is inspiring. And that's really when I decided to like do this full on, like play this full on. So I've always kind of approached this business as something I needed to do for me first, and then realized that, first of all, when I wrote the book, sharing my story and telling people that this is something that inspired other people. And I just realized if I could make money, if I could build a 7-figure net worth and 7-figure income, anyone could do it. And that was something that was a gift that just kept on giving. I didn't even think about that when I came into this business. So, and I've always approached it as a journalist. I love writing and speaking, which is why I wrote a book. And so I'm like the oddball in the industry, which works for me.
So are you still in touch with the woman who changed your life?
Funny enough, no. Isn't that interesting?
Oh, wow.
She ended up having a baby. She had twins. Like I thought we were gonna do business together because we started off, and she ended up she found out she was gonna be pregnant with twins, so her life kind of changed too. But honestly, it was such a launch pad for me, and so I'm very grateful for that relationship. She was the reason I got into the business. So I'm very, very grateful.
That's amazing. So we both were raised by single moms. And we both came from very humble beginnings. I remember, stories about my mom. My goodness, we lived in this little house we rented in Halliburton, Ontario, and there were cracks in the door. And it was so cold in the wintertime that my mom took sample pieces of carpet and nailed them to the door to try to stop the breeze from coming in. And
Wow.
my mom would take a pound of ground beef and she would make chili, but she would take that pound of ground beef, and I swear she would get 5 quarts of chili that she would put in these little sealer jars. And she'd take another pound of ground beef and do the same thing, but it would be stew. And I ate so much chili and so much stew as a child because she knew how to take that and really spread it out and make it last a long, long time. And, it was funny. I remember my mom always saying things to me like, I hope you never have to work as hard as I do. I hope you have a better life than, I've had, because things were really, really hard for her. I mean, I don't know how old you are. I'm 53. So when I think back,
going on 53, that's
all
crazy.
right. So there you go. We're the same age. So back in the day when your mom was a single mom and my mom was a single mom, being a single mom wasn't a common thing back then.
No.
Like back then, women stayed with their husbands, whether they were mean, nasty, abusive, whatever, they stayed. And it was a rarity for, me. I was one of the few kids in my school that was being raised by a single parent. And so I remember a defining moment for me in my early teens. I might not have even been a teenager yet. I might have been around 11 or 12 years old. I was hemorrhaging from my bowel really, really badly. I hadn't been diagnosed yet, but I have Crohn's disease. And I was really sick. I mean, I spent a week in ICU. I had to be transfused multiple times. But prior to the day my mom took me to the hospital, my mom had gone to work that day. And I was, in Halliburton. Halliburton's this little small town in the Muskokas, like north of Toronto, small, safe community. And I just kept, they kind of kept me hanging around the doctor's office that day because my doctor had called my mom at work and said, she's going to need to go to the hospital. Do you want us to send her by ambulance or do you want to take her? My mom didn't want me to go in an ambulance by myself. So she was going to take me, but my mom's at work. So my mom knows that I'm not well, but she doesn't know how bad it is. So she goes to her boss, and this guy tells her, you have problems and I have problems too. And my problem means you need to stay here. He would not let my mom leave work to come and take me to the
My
hospital.
goodness. Oh my
So
goodness.
when she finished her workday at like 4 or 5 o'clock, she came to town, and her and my aunt, who was an RNA, drove me to Peterborough. By the time they got me to the hospital in Peterborough, the only place in my body they could find a pulse was in my ankle because I had lost so much blood. That's when I ended up in ICU. And that was a defining moment in my life because I remember thinking, no one will ever tell me I am not allowed to leave work when I need to be there for somebody who matters to me. And if you boil it down, the reason my mom was afraid to leave is she was afraid to lose her job. And the reason she was afraid to lose her job is she was afraid to lose the financial stability that she had to support her child, which meant she was afraid she would lose her child if she lost her job. And so what a terrible situation to be in. And that is my money story. That's why, the creation of wealth and understanding money is so important to me. I take care of my mom financially today because my mom has stage 4 COPD. She can't work. And it's really all rooted back to that original story of when I was a child.
I mean, it's interesting because I'm talking about the whole hustle mentality. So Caribbean immigrant, Canada, it's all about hustle. So my mother kind of trained me without me realizing to be a self-employed person from the time I was, like 5, 6. Because when my mother came here pregnant with me, she didn't know. So I went back to Jamaica, stayed with a relative, came back when she was more financially settled at around 7. So at 7, she's working 9 to 5 at Sears. And then on the weekends and evenings, she's hustling. She's got like a catering job. She's got all these positions, and child labor laws are not what they are now. So, and they didn't have babysitting back then. So whatever she was doing, pretty much I was doing. And, honestly, it was great preparation for being an entrepreneur because I saw her just trying to make a secondary income stream and a third income stream. And, all of those things are, kind of get you ready to own your own business. Because honestly, she wanted to be an entrepreneur. She just wasn't sure. She didn't know. She didn't have her money, right? She didn't have her mind. She was just she was in hustle mode. And your mindset is such a big piece of it, right? Because like your mom who was afraid to leave her job and lose her daughter, my mother was just did not want to be in a situation where she wasn't like surviving. She was always worried. So she always had a whole bunch of different things that she was doing. And for a long time, that's what I thought. I thought, because there's no plan B when you're a single mom or you're on your own. She just wanted to make sure she was always generating some kind of income to get her to the next day and then the day after. And, sometimes when you're a business owner, you can operate that way too, right? Where you're constantly just hustling until the next day. And
you see lots of business owners that do that, lots of them. So it sounds to me like we both learned a good work ethic from our moms. We learned to do what we need to do, but we also have learned when enough is enough.
Yeah. I was like, there's no way. Let me just get my money right, because I did not want to work that hard. And like I said, I was so grateful for that, for this woman who just showed up in my life. It was honestly one of those moments in life where you think, is this real? Is this really happening? Because it was a watershed moment. It completely changed the trajectory of my life. So I'm again, very, very grateful that she made me realize I wanted to learn everything about money. That's how I ended up becoming a planner. That I wanted to learn everything I could about building wealth. I ended up, building wealth. I started off with real estate, investing, stocks, everything, just because I wanted to learn. Yeah. And when I started, and I think it's just that 10,000 hour rule, which is why I'm like, you always need to keep learning something about money because I had that start when I was 16 where I was on my own and I had no plan B, and I had to learn about basic things like budgeting and making sure there
Mhm.
was enough money to pay the bills. That's just something that I can do. I can live on not much because I know how to do it. And that's kind of, to me, the first skill you need to learn as
Yeah.
an entrepreneur. Get your needs and wants in check.
Yeah. Yeah,
Because I
absolutely.
think I think today people have a much different sense of what they need, because I was so used to, like, when I bought my very first home. Oh my goodness, I think I spent completely all in. My basic expenses were so low. I saved probably 75% of
Mhm.
what I needed for my first down payment on my first home, because I wanted to be in a situation where landlord couldn't kick me out. That was really why I was wanting my first home. I'm like, I didn't want somebody to be able to come to me and say, hey, we need our place back, or we're
Yeah.
raising, or what have you. And so it's all about, what's your big why? Get your wants and needs in check, because everything can't be a need.
Right.
Right?
Right. Right. So let's talk a little bit about entrepreneurs and why an entrepreneur would need a financial planner or a financial advisor. So, I get I get all these, smarmy people who reach out to me on LinkedIn all the time trying to sell me financial planning services, and I actually don't work with a financial planner. So, I'm a little bit like you in the sense that although I'm definitely not a financial planner, so don't take financial advice from me. I am not certified in any way, shape, or form, but I know a lot about money. And I will tell you, I had a really bad experience many years ago on a flight to a conference. I sat beside someone who was a new financial planner for Investors Group.
Ooh,
And she was part of
okay.
my BNI group, and I had moved my RSPs to her because that's what you do in BNI. You refer business to each other. And I thought I was being this good little doobie. And we're sitting on this flight to the conference that we were going to, and I started asking her questions. I was like, "Hey, have you read Rich Dad Poor Dad?" No.
My
Do you know
God,
who
that's
Robert?
my big
Do you know who
book.
Robert Kiyosaki is? No. Have you read Smart Couples Finish Rich? No. Do you know who David Bach is? No. Have you read The Millionaire Maker by Laura Langmeyer? No. Do you know who Susie Orman is? No. And I'm sitting in my seat thinking, I'm screwed. I just put my money in the hands of a financial planner who doesn't think about money the way I think about money.
Yeah,
And
values
so,
values are so
yeah,
important.
and values are so important. So I would love for you to just, talk to us a little bit about, for our listeners, why it's important for an entrepreneur to have an advisor, how to find the right advisor, and how to figure out whether your values are aligned before you make the decision to move your money like I did, which was a big mistake, which ended up being a really big win because once I realized I didn't trust her with my money, I pulled all my money out. And so I had to pay taxes on the money that I pulled out, but I invested that money in real estate. Literally, like the timing of when I pulled it out to buy a cottage in Nova Scotia. My husband and I wanted to buy this cottage, and we bought it in Nova Scotia. Literally 2 days after I took it out, the subprime market hit and people's RSPs were cut in half. So it was dumbass timing. Good luck for me that I pulled it out when I did, because it would have taken a royal hitting. But anyways, enough about me. Talk to me about you and what our listeners should be considering when they're trying to decide if a financial planner is the right thing for them.
Yeah, I think I think a big one is, consider the fact that you're building wealth using your business. But that's like one track, right?
Mhm.
I'm a big believer in multiple streams of income. So, the thing about business, the thing about life is it can be volatile. So having a secondary income stream not associated with your business. And again, I'm a huge believer. So again, figure out what your values are. So here you can build with a good financial planner, you can build a secondary stream of income. Not sorry, all of a sudden I had a piece of hair in my mouth. No
That's
idea where it
okay.
came from. This is the most bizarre thing. Anyway, you can build a secondary income stream not tied to your business, so that whatever time frame. And the thing I know about business owners is They tell me all the time, Jackie, I'm never going to stop working. Some people tell me they're going to die at their desk. That's fantastic. I deal with a lot of legal professionals. They're like, I'm going to die at my desk. Fantastic. But what if you don't? What if you get sick before you're on your way to, dying at your desk? So it's all about building. To me, it's really important. And these are the things I've learned losing my mother early is to really have as many contingencies as you possibly can when it comes to your business. And that's one of the things I look at is let's risk manage, because it's all about sleeping at night. So if you've got a plan that allows you to build your business and you're projecting what you think your business is going to be worth, and then you've got another sort of diversified assets stream that is going to, it's aligned to your risk, so it's going to grow at a conservative rate of return, but it's also going to create an income stream for you so that no matter what happens in the future, you're going to be in a good place financially. Is that going to be more valuable to you than to have one track that you're running on? So that's one of the things I look at. And then the other thing is to do that math with someone, right? To do those projections. I've spent a lot of time with business owners looking at, okay, so I'm building my business. I've dealt with a lot of people who decide in their 50s or 40s that they're going to go into a second career and start a business. And they want to know, what's that going to look like? Like if I start a business now based on what I have saved already, will I be okay? Like, what does that business need to earn?
And we're living longer. So,
Yeah,
you
100%. So
you have to plan. Do you have enough money to live to 100? Because there is a possibility that you may.
So let's do the math together. Let's look at your life expectancy. Let's look at like inflation, this little thing called inflation, probably people understanding what inflation is, the cost of things going up, like your money being worth less as time goes on, and then just again, doing the math based on what your plans are. What's your chances of success? Let's put all of that down, because what people tell me about doing that exercise with them is it gives them so much confidence. It makes them feel way more confidence in their business. It gives them so many more options. Who doesn't want more choice versus less choice? Because if you're running on one track, you have less choices. And then in terms of, value systems, right? I think some really good questions to ask someone that you're looking at is, what's their investment philosophy? What's their philosophy? What's their experience of if I'm working with you, what's the experience of working with you going to look like? How many times am I going to hear from you? What's your experience about, how do you feel about, like, what's your philosophy about the markets? What do your clients say about you? Ask for referrals. What's your typical client look like? Who do you serve? Because you can't serve everybody. So that's some things to think about. My niche is I do a lot of work with business owners, female business owners, typically legal professionals, but it all just depends, right? So ask those questions, because the person that you're dealing with, you really want to make sure they understand who you are and how they can help you, and what are the challenges that you're dealing with that they have strategies to help overcome. I think that's really crucial.
So how do you know?
And then your gut.
Yeah. But how do you know that they have the smarts? So, this sounds really awful, but I want to know how much money you have. I want to know, I don't mean you specifically, but if you're a financial planner, how do I know you're not living paycheck to paycheck? How do I know that you're actually good with your own money? Because to me, it's like when people they're picking a business coach. I'm like, well, do you want to work with a business coach that's done what you aspire to do? Or do you want to work with a business coach who's still trying to build their business? Right. And so, we need to find people that have a proven track record, but how do you figure that out? How do you learn that? Sorry, I have a little dog who wants to bark and she sees somebody walking, another dog across the street. I'll get your collar. I'll get your bark collar. She is the cutest thing.
Cute.
She's adorable.
I think you can ask that person and they should feel confident to say, what is your track record? That's why referrals are important. That's why asking the advisor that you're working with for, if you want to speak, because I've had clients ask, can I speak to some of your clients? Who are your clients? I want to speak to them. Are you wealthy? And I mean, I'm one of those people who I'm very comfortable to say started with zero. and build my own 7-figure net worth. I own all types of different things. And I'm like, here, I'm happy to show people. It doesn't bother me specifically, but it's a conversation that you need to have a level of comfort with the person that you're dealing with. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm like, trust your gut. Like your gut isn't that wrong. And, at the end of the day, you need to work with someone that you feel comfortable with, because going back to risk management and mindset, it's all about working with somebody that you feel is confident, you feel confident working with, feel that you can trust to tell your financial truths to, because often our financial truths have to do with some trauma, financial trauma that we experience that might still be, unfortunately, working against us in our current scenario, right? So you need to be able to talk to somebody that you trust, very much like a coach, like what you do, Lisa. So keeping them honest, you can work with someone who can call you out when, you're doing things that are actually going to, maybe keep you in the same financial position you've been in, just based on trauma you've experienced in the past. So it's all about working with someone that you feel confident about, that you get referrals from. So trust your network, ask for referrals, check out their websites, check out what's on their websites, Google their names, see what's being said about them. Like that's what's so wonderful. There's a lot of social proof you can find around people. Like, what does it say about them? What credentials do they have? Like, find that information out. It's really interesting, Lisa, just recently, because nobody comes to my office anymore. Most of my appointments are remote. And so I had to do a podcast or something recently, and the individual asked me to take a picture of my, because I said, nobody comes to my office, all my certificates are there, my awards are there, nobody sees them. And so they're like, take a picture of your office wall and put it on Zoom. So as soon as I did that, strangely enough, clients are like, oh, like people I never met before, like new prospects coming to me, they're like, oh, those are all your credentials? I'm like, well, they're mine in case I bought them. Like, they're still mine, right? But anyway, people do notice these things. And so it's not, the first thing you should ask is, what credentials do you have? What do they mean? How would they help me? Those are also really great questions to ask. Tell me, what licenses do you hold? How do they help me? Are you a fiduciary? These are things that fiduciary just basically means my licenses mean I have to act in my client's best interest.
Right. So
that's actually my license. So these are things you can ask people.
The story that I tell myself about financial planning is that a financial planner is only interested in getting me to invest in RSPs and mutual funds.
That's
And, to me, financial planning, to your point, is so much more diverse than that. So what is your approach to advising people? Are you only advising them on things like RSPs, mutual funds? Like, how do you approach, how do you holistically approach helping somebody financially?
Well, first of all, I'm somebody who would be a part of your overall planning team. So that's something to really consider. So if somebody comes to me and they say, I'm 55 and I'm really concerned about the markets, but I'm also thinking I only have so many years. How much do I need to save for retirement? I don't really know. How are my investments doing? Not sure. I've never really had anybody look at them to give me a sense of how do I compare to how the market's doing. So really my strategy is, how can I first and foremost help you accumulate wealth? How can I help you grow wealth? How can I help you preserve what you're actually earning? So by the time you get to retirement, that money is preserved from things like taxes. I do a lot of tax planning work with my clients. So let's start off and then transition that money to the people that you care about. Maybe it's a favorite charity, maybe it's to your children, as much as possible from income taxes. So those are some of the things. If you're working with a financial planner, they can actually create a plan, document a plan, your numbers, do the math with you, your numbers to say, what does your cash flow look like? Do you know? Have you ever looked at how your cash flows? Again, that needs and wants. How much of your money, you say you have no money, but where is it going? Money is either saved or spent.
Right.
Where is it going?
It's either flowing through your hands or it's staying in your hands.
It's staying in your hands. So these are some of the conversations. So I have some really exciting conversations with people because sometimes they've never looked at their financial life in this way. So what does your cash flow tell me? And to me, there's three levels of cash flow and wealth that people need to think about. There's your foundational wealth. That's what you need to pay your bills. Then there's like the lifestyle wealth. And the lifestyle wealth is, okay, now I can pay my bills and things like retirement. I'll have a redundant income stream. I'm building these income streams, capital that's going to create these income streams for me later. And that will help me pay for things like my retirement, maybe my children's education, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's apex wealth. And apex wealth is that wealth that you build when you feel very financially secure. It might be the wealth you pass on. It's generational wealth that you might be passing on to others as well. But that's when you have apex wealth, you're in a scenario where you've created a nice redundant stream of income that now it's all about how can we preserve that wealth from things like income taxes? What can we do? And that's when the team is important, because it might mean talking to the lawyer that you might have on your team to help you look at how do you structure your will. It might mean talking to your accountant. So I'm having conversations all the time, engaging clients, accountants, because truly what happens is a lot with business owners and even with clients, I see them having plans in silo of one another. So their accountant is doing one thing, their lawyer is doing one thing, and a really good planner will help bridge those conversations between all of your advisory teams to make sure everybody's working toward the same end, which is to help you accumulate as much money as possible, grow that wealth as much as possible from things like taxes, and pass it on to the people you care about and the people you know.
Are you familiar with the FIRE method?
No.
Okay, so the FIRE method is this thing that millennials are doing. It's called, it stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. Right. And the idea behind it is if you can save 20 times what you spend in a year, then you can retire early. Because if you invest that money the right way, it can pay you enough money to actually live the way you want to live. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a choice, right? It kind of goes back to what we were saying. Money is either saved or spent. I kind of talked to you a little bit about my first home purchase that I only spent 25% of what I made that year. So it's like, truthfully, wealth on some level is a choice. It all depends on what you do with the money that comes in. So the FIRE method, now that you say that, I have heard it. I just didn't know it was that. But the bottom line is that's why what you do with the money that comes through your hands is so important. It's truly looking at it and then making a decision. Do I want to have that money work for me, as that advisor said to me? Do I want that money to help build that apex wealth in the future that'll give me long-term financial security? Or do I want that money to literally be someone else's benefit or somebody else's benefit? So that's something I think that it's really crucial. But going back, the other thing I find, and this is something you brought up on my podcast as well, Lisa, is wealth also, you can lose a lot of your wealth, especially as a business owner, if you don't plan your taxes properly.
Yes.
And I've seen this so many times with business owners who, they start to do well and then they don't realize that, the government is literally in partnership with them. So if they're not working with an advisory team, working with a planner, because planners look at, okay, so what do you expect your income to be? What's the implications? Let's have a meeting. Let's have a review meeting. How are things going this year? Just so that you can go back to your accountant and say, okay, now this is what the income tax is going to look like based on the trajectory I'm going on. And I've had these kinds of conversations with clients and we're like, you need to incorporate now. You're going to make over $250 this year and you need to incorporate right away, because the tax bill is going to be in Canada 54%,
right?
On whatever you make over 220 grand. Yeah. So you have a team that can help you figure these things out, because if you're having this conversation now, if you're a June 15th tax filer, it's too late. Right. You got to just write that check.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's money that's literally passed through your hands, gone to CRA that you're not see again.
Yeah. Don't even get me started on that. I can't tell you, now that I'm a W-2 employee of my own company in the United States, I can't tell you the difference in taxes. Like my taxes, the tax rate on my take-home income is so low in comparison to Canada.
It's
now, not, I mean, it's different because I have to pay for healthcare, but
No,
it's
no,
it's
100%. But
still
taxes are a big issue in Canada, and I spend a lot
huge.
of time with clients. So if you hold investments outside of registered products like TFSAs, RSPs, again, you have to consider how you're actually accumulating,
Hmm.
growing that income, growing that wealth that we were talking
Hmm.
about, right?
Yeah.
So if all of a sudden, the markets have a good year and you're holding mutual funds, for example, where there's a lot of turnover in what the investment owns, you could be in a scenario again where you get a huge tax bill at the end of the year for
Yeah.
no fault of your own, other than the mutual fund manager that you're invested in sold some stuff.
Yeah.
So you have to look at, well, how do I plan for that?
Yeah.
Then to look at strategies to reduce the income tax. Lots of clients that I work with, and their accountants don't even talk to them about this, don't know they can go back to a
Yeah.
year. They can go back a few years to reduce the taxes on a year when they had less income, or go forward a
Right.
few
You can
years.
carry your losses back. Yeah.
Yeah, how do I cultivate losses in my account to help offset a year like that, where
Yeah.
you're all of a sudden you've got a huge capital gain tax bill? So, building a team, I mean, it's hard when you're a business owner to do everything on your own. It's actually
Yeah.
super overwhelming, and it might make you feel even more vulnerable and just avoid doing anything about your money. But at the end of
Yeah.
the day, the money you earn is the money you have. So
Yeah.
how much of it do you want to hold on to? That's
Yeah.
the question.
Okay. I have one last question for you, and then we're going to wrap up. My last question is, how much money does somebody need to have before they start working with a financial planner?
I actually think you don't have to have, I don't think you need to have a certain amount, but you do need to know what the advisor that you're working with, what's the minimum that they will take on. So some advisors might have limits. Financial planners that charge a fee will work with you, doesn't matter what your income level, again, though you just have to work with that advisor. But I actually think that if you're someone who is starting that whole process of accumulating wealth, you might need to talk to a planner just to figure out what if you're on the right track and what you need to do.
Hmm.
If you're someone who's in that stage where you're growing wealth and you're trying to figure out where you need to be, again, you're going to need to speak to somebody to figure out, how am I doing? Because if you're working with a planner who doesn't have a bias, and these are why I go back to what's your investment philosophy. A good planner can give you third-party information about how your investments are doing. They can tell you what they charge to manage your investments. If they do investment management, they can show you the fees you're paying, because all these things erode your wealth. So you need to know, well, what's that person going to charge you? How do they get paid to
Hmm.
help you manage your wealth? These are questions that you need to be able to freely ask, and they should freely be able to tell you. It shouldn't be a mystery if you're working with somebody,
Hmm.
how they get paid, what they charge to help you manage your investments, all those things they should be able to show you, and show you why they make the recommendations they do with third-party information, so that you
So
can have confidence. So what I'm saying is, it doesn't matter how much wealth you have, it's about how you can grow that wealth at the end of the day. So I don't think you need a specific amount of wealth. And I think that's probably one of the biggest reasons that people don't actually think that they are good enough to work with an advisor. They're like, oh, I need a certain amount. No, you don't need a certain amount. You just need to know how that planner is going to be able to
right.
help
Right.
add
Because
value.
some planners will charge you for the plan. Other
Mhm.
planners get paid based on the investment.
That's
But
right.
then there's risk and reward with both, right? If
Right.
you're only getting paid based on the investment, then you have to, if you don't have a lot of money to invest, then they may not care about your investment as much, right? So it's important that you do your due diligence. So what I'm hearing you
Do
say is the
yeah,
best
do
day to start interviewing is today.
start right away. There's no right time, and there's not a certain amount. There's no fixed amount that you need to
Mhm.
have. You just need to know who you're working with, how they get paid, and how they can add value. Because chances are, no matter what stage you are, either in the accumulate stage, the preserve stage, the growth stage, probably need some advice.
Yeah. Jackie, this has been really helpful. I really appreciate your time and expertise. I do have one follow-up question because we have listeners to this podcast from all over the world. So I know that you are based in Canada. Are you able to help people outside of Canada, or are you primarily just a financial planner for Canadians?
I'm primarily a financial planner for Canadians, unless you're a US Canadian resident.
Okay.
Let's say you're a Florida person like you are, Lisa. living in Florida, but still files taxes in Canada, then I'd be in a position to.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Well, thank you so much. I also want to wrap up by saying in the show notes, we will have links to Jackie's website, links to her book, and all that good stuff so that you can learn more about her. You know, this season is really dedicated to building a good advisor team. And I think you need, financial planners on your team or financial advisors on your team. You definitely need a good accountant that understands taxes. You need an IP lawyer. I mean, I have an immigration attorney. We're going to bring all kinds of different advisors to the table to have conversations like this. Some of them I work with, some of them I don't, some of them I know. But I hope that by the end of this season, you will walk away with a better understanding of what you need on your entrepreneurial advisory board so that you can really step into the future that you aspire to for your business. So thank you again, Jackie, for being here. This has been fantastic. And thank you for listening to She Talks Business.